Welcome to BIB 222 online dual enrollment. Very excited for what we're going to do today. We're kind of a little experiment in biblical theology, and I think you're going to like this. I think it's going to help you connect some of the pieces in Scripture. So let's go ahead and dive in. What we're looking at is the theme of salvific space amid deadly waters. And this is a theme in Scripture. There are a lot of passages that talk about the theme of salvific space, spaces where you're safe in the midst of deadly waters. And what we're going to see is that theme actually unifies the Testaments. And so let's look at these together. So what we're going to talk about is what is the rakia of Genesis 1, 6 through 8. The rakia, usually translated firmament, separates the waters above from the waters below. A lot of controversy about it. Is it a concrete dome? Do the ancient writers conceive of it as a dome? Is it the clouds? Is it something else? We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about this meta-narrative theme of salvation in the midst of deadly water. So what is this thing, the rakia? And God said, let there be a rakia, sorry about the typo there, in the midst of the waters, and let it be a thing separating waters from waters. And God made the rakia and separated the waters that were under the expanse, under the rakia, same word, from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. God called the rakia heaven. And there was evening and there was morning, a second day. It's very common in this discussion of what is the rakia, to talk about, concrete dome, fixed dome, the stars being embedded, the sun, the moon, windows, and that's what flooded the earth. Same thing that somehow the earth is floating on water. And this is presented as the worldview of the people responsible for Genesis 1. And since we know that isn't the case, many people will say, well, we should modify how we understand inerrancy or even how we understand the Bible. And I want to argue that nearly every part of that argument is wrong. We see that this is a very debated thing. You can look and see the words being used. God created an expanse, a canopy, a vault, a huge space. My favorite is the NCV, God created a something. A lot of people debate what this is and how we should understand it. The idea of the concrete dome actually probably comes from Nicholas of Lyra. Wrote in the Middle Ages a book, Postilla, notes on the entire Bible. This is actually not his drawing from Genesis 1. It's actually his drawing from Ezekiel 1 of the heavenly vision that Ezekiel has, which clearly that's a vision of something in heaven, not how he conceived of the earth. The Geneva Bible copies that drawing of Nicholas, and so the Geneva Bible is the Bible the Pilgrims came over with, and you can see very similar drawing. That continued until about 1898 when Owen Whitehouse, at least this is my understanding, he first did this drawing that conceived of there being a dome representing, resting on the mountains, and that this is kind of a Babylonian idea, and the great Tehom is related to Tiamat. He's kind of the guy who got that rolling, at least in terms of these images, and he's followed by an astronomer who decides to write on the Bible, Schiaparelli, and you can see that this starts to be copied. And so in Robinson, we have this rather elaborate one. And, Gaster repeats it. This is a Catholic study Bible. This is a picture you often see on the internet. Alan Dickin, and then Peter Enns, who's one of the people saying, look, you don't really have to believe what the Bible teaches. He repeats that drawing, and it's presented like this is a fact. Well, I've got some problems with that view. This very common Faith Life Study Bible, Logos Bible software. The first problem that I have with the view, and I want to say this to you high school students, that whenever you do research, there's this word that they say don't plagiarize. And I don't know, when I look at this copyrighted drawing here, I start looking at this drawing, heaven of heavens, gate of heaven, sun, windows, the sky, moon, stars, great deep. I start looking at this drawing, and I start looking at this drawing, and it looks like either the idea was so just clearly in the text that they came up with the same drawing, or it looks like maybe they copied. And that bothers me. If you're going to research and you base something, you should at least tell where you got it. And that's not the case here. So I've got that problem, but the idea that Moses thought the sky rested on mountains, this is what we know about Moses. Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. The Egyptians, when Moses lived, could plot the position of a star over time and could build a pyramid so that they would be a vent through the pyramid so that star would line up on the anniversary of the king. Well, you don't have to go outside very long when you realize that stars dip below the horizon and they follow, most of the stars follow in a circular orbit, and the planets seem to wander a little bit. But if you think that the culture that built the pyramids thought that the sky was a concrete dome, I would just ask you to go outside and look at the stars for a couple of days in a row. The only people who would foster that are people who spend their times reading only books in the library and never go outside. It's a foolish idea. Download a Stargazer app on your phone and watch the orbits, and you realize that sure, it could be round, but it would have to be a ball, and it would have to be dipping below and rising above the horizons. And I'm told by experts to get the movements of all the stars, you would need about 7 different domes. This is just an idea. Kudos for the artwork and the colors, but Moses would laugh if you said this is what you would believe. He knew that wasn't the case. And I would couple that with a second argument, and that's this, that God made his word for ordinary people and used the Bible to interpret the Bible. And if you do that, I just want to ask you a question. If you came to the text, and remember you're Moses' first audience, you're there in the wilderness, and you hear Moses talking about the violent splitting of waters and dry land appearing, you're part of Moses' first audience. What kind of imagery would come to mind? Is this the imagery that would come to mind, or is this the imagery that would come to mind? Parting the Red Sea, coming to this deadly water and creating salvific space. And if you take time to actually look at the words that appear, you'll realize that many of the words at creation and dividing the waters actually appear in the dividing of the waters at the Red Sea. And so when we hear of this violent parting of the waters, the rakia is whatever is holding this back. And it's interesting that even secular scholars will notice that Jews stopped asking the question, what held the waters back? And they started asking the question, who held the waters back? When we come and we look at these waters, it's very interesting that it talks about the tehom, the deep. But notice how that's translated in the Greek Bible, the abyss. Darkness was over the face of the abyss. And if we did a word study on the abyss, what we know about the abyss is that demons are terrified of that place. They beg Jesus not to send them to the abyss. And we know that the final place where the devil and his angels and the people who don't want God's rule, where their throne is in the abyss, usually translated bottomless pit. That's what this means, a place without a bottom to it. But clearly this abyss is going back to that original creation and the division of water. So Moses is saying you experienced kind of a microcosm of creation when Moses, picturing God, divided the waters, created salvific space. And notice that that's what's going on in the world, that the abyss is being held back by God, and people can flourish, some for a time, like the Egyptians, and then the abyss will crash down, and some, like the people of God, who will go through and make it all the way to the other side. Of course, another story where you have salvific space is the ark, and in many ways many of the same words are being used, and so inside the ark you have salvific space, outside you have deadly waters. When Joshua repeats the Red Sea crossing, only now it's at Zarethan, waters backed up at Zarethan, and it's the presence of God, just like the presence of God was at the Red Sea. It's at Adam. That can't be by accident. And Zarethan is their distress. So cut the waters off at Adam at their distress, and the people cross over. Elijah and Elisha perform that same miracle, and Elijah, Elisha are the Moses-Joshua team repeated, and so Elijah goes to heaven, the same place where Moses died. And we're told that this is at the Abel Shittim crossing. By the time we come to the New Testament, we hear that Jesus is baptized, and guess where he's baptized? At Bethany beyond the Jordan. The waters don't look much now, and that's because there are many dams on the Jordan River, many dams holding the water back so it doesn't enter flood stage. But this is the place, and so Jesus, as the new Joshua, is taking people out of the field of thorns. Moses can only get you to the field of thorns, but then this really cool guy named Joshua, translated in English, Jesus, is able to take the people into the land flowing with milk and honey. And we come to the last one, this glassy sea. I saw what appeared to be a glassy sea mixed with fire. And those who had conquered the beast and its image standing beside the glassy sea with harps of God in their hands, and they sing the song of Moses. Well, this is exactly what Israel does after they cross the Red Sea. They sing the song of Moses. So it seems clear that all these passages are being connected, this heavenly vision. The rakia is this salvific space, something or someone holding back the waters, and ultimately in this story that is the person of Jesus. So what is the rakia? Well, it seems like it's talking about some kind of heavenly temple, and the waters are like the veil. There's definitely tabernacle language in Genesis 1, paralleled in all of these passages. And then there's salvation through waters. And so when we come to the original creation, that's what it's talking about, and not some kind of concrete dome. So Greg Beale, very good writer on biblical theology, says the picture of the separation of waters in conjunction with the mention of God's Spirit and of God placing people in a new land seems to go back all the way back to Genesis 1:2, and the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the waters. And 1:9 says, God said, let the waters below be gathered into one place and let dry land appear. And it was so. So what I encourage you as a class and with your teacher, talk about these ideas, see what you think, and love to see your essays as you write them, and look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks.